knowledge and discovery. Let's learn from the extraordinary lives of the greatest in the art of living.
Join the conversation with hosts Dr. Wael Harasi and Dr. Lamia Al-Haj
Every day
from Sunday to Thursday
from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, dear listeners, I welcome you and I salute you with the salutation of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to your show, The Art of Living. As always, your hosts today are myself, Lamia Al-Haj, and
Wael Harasi.
And we would like to remind you that our lines are open throughout the show. Today we have a very interesting topic that I am sure you're can't wait to pick up your phones and call. So just to remind you of the number, that's 24602058. 24602058. And we have a short announcement before we start the show, and that is that the show is going to start from tomorrow inshallah at 2:40. So that's going to be 20 minutes earlier, starting from tomorrow inshallah.
For 1 hour.
For 1 hour, that's right.
So 2:40 till 3:40 inshallah.
Exactly. The title of today's show is The Power of Identity. And we have in the studio today a very interesting person to talk to. I'm really happy to introduce Dr. Mahdi Ahmed Al-Mathwani, who is with us today in the studio. Dr. Mahdi is a founding member of the Environment Society of Oman, ESO, since 1994, and is currently a Sustainable Development Advisor. He was originally trained as a TESOL instructor, and then he moved into Human Resource Development, moving then to Environmental Education and Awareness. He held lots of positions. Amongst them is the Director General for Nature Conservation in Ministry of Regional Municipalities and Environment. He then moved to Sultan Qaboos University, where he also held different positions and responsibilities, concluding his tenure as the Advisor of Environmental Studies and Research. Of course, the biography of Dr. Mahdi, mashallah, is very impressive, and he held lots of directory, advisory, and consultancy jobs. We need a whole show to introduce him, but please excuse me, Dr. Mahdi, and I would like to simply say thank you very much for accepting to be here today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So today's topic, as I said, is the power of identity. We are going to discuss lots of things, and we would value your input. We want to discuss what's the role of identity in shaping our personality, our attitude. What is the effect of having or sensing the sense of identity on us as individuals, as families? How does it affect us in the society level and in the nation as well? We're going to discuss what makes our identity and how does it get shaped over time. Wael started off by asking me intriguing questions before the show, and I said you have to mention that because it kept me thinking. So Wael, what do you say about it?
Before going to the questions, if we would like to remind ourselves and the listeners that this show is about learning the art of living from the legends, people who have experience, and I'm very excited to be here in front of Dr. Mahdi to learn from him. And also, if we talk about identity, and Sheikh Khalfan, rahimahullah, Sheikh Khalfan, he had a very distinct way, the way he looked, the long beard, he's tall, with the white turban and white dishdasha, and he once, wherever he goes, he would wear exactly the same clothes. And there was a story that he was telling once, last year actually, that when he went to London in the tube, there was, you get people with guitars and singing and with a hat asking for coins. And as soon as he saw Sheikh Khalfan, he changed the song, and he was as if he was talking to Jesus. Oh, Jesus, save me. And so that was a funny part of Sheikh Khalfan, but also a very serious one, that he was very proud of his own identity and the way he dressed. But when we talk about identity, there are a lot of questions that come about. If we talk about individual identity, how does that match with trying to live life in a world where people want to be united? How will I be united with someone from the East or the West, at the same time try and have an individual identity? Is identity something that would drive you to be more racist because you might think that you are superior to others? Or maybe it is something that would drive you to excel, be proud of your history, and try and excel for the future. There are a lot of questions regarding identity. and I think no one more suitable to answer those and guide us through than Dr. Mahdi.
Well, not at all. I don't. I would discourage you from creating this kind of expectation.
That's modesty
among the audience. But since we are paying tribute to Marhum Sheikh Khalfan Al-Aysari, let me mention several points of contact that I have had with Sheikh Khalfan in not a very recent past. One of them was at the university. We invited him to speak to members of staff in the language center.
Okay.
And they were predominantly, of course, they were non-Arabs, non-Muslims, and I think it was in Ramadan as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were seated and listening to the man, as you said, in his attire and the way he looks, before his audience. And Sheikh Khalfan, of course, he had his own way of interpretation in English that was never heard before amongst us. You try to kind of emulate or mimic the way English speakers would speak. He doesn't do that.
Yes.
He speaks English in a very spontaneous Arabic manner. But he would also, you will feel the diphthongs, the letter, the consonants, the way he speaks in a very easy way. And he was trying, of course, to explain some of the complex religious concepts to the audience. And it strikes me that, the man was so brilliant in the manner that he propagated what he wanted to kind of impart. And then, of course, we were seated next to each other because I was the host, basically, and I told him that, how did you do that? He said, when we were sent to learn English, so the instructor told us, he gave us a recorder with a small microphone. He told us to go down the road and speak to people. And this is the way we improved our English along the 4 or 5 skills. And that was, of course, number one encounter. The next encounter that we have had, we invited him to speak to our audience at ESO. And it was, again, one of those Ramadan days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as much as I listened to Sheikh Khalfan through Lakshmi, this program, I felt that he must have had an impressive hallmark on everybody.
Absolutely.
Who listened to him.
Yeah.
Whether Omanis or non-Omanis.
True.
It's a great loss to Oman that Sheikh Khalfan has departed.
Yeah.
And but it's a call for celebration, that the heritage that Sheikh Khalfan has left behind is so impressive and so marked that everybody would remember him across religions.
Yes.
And this is an opportunity to we beg Allah, the Almighty, to grant him with mercy and
Ameen.
inshallah.
Ameen. And we don't want it to be just a heritage. We want it to be alive.
Yes.
Yeah, and continue. And hopefully that what we are doing, me and Lamia, today is just part of that, and keeping the ideas and the values of that person. Not necessarily he invented them, but he was able to convey to youth and almost everyone that the way of the Prophet and the companions, peace be upon them, it's not something of the past. You can do it in modern way. You can be modern, and yet you can still implement the teachings. And that's why it was a live example, and I think it will be easier to relate to, and it will be much more inspiring for people because they've seen him, they've lived with him.
Very true.
Yeah. So if we talk about identity, is it really identity that could drive someone to be racist, or is it something that we should really cling on, having an identity? And what is identity?
Well, to begin with, there are competing arguments with this issue, and the issue as straightforward as it sounds, it is not, and particularly, of course, when you are faced with these plethora of calls for globalization and lowering barriers, and I know that for sure that in the UNESCO they have proclaimed the death of 6,000 languages in the world.
Wow.
Yes, 6,000 languages were proclaimed dead in the world because there were no one to defend them, no one to speak them, no one to articulate using those languages. And of course there is this colonization and those small ethnic minorities, groups, they were amalgamated and immersed in larger groups, and they resorted to a language that is a better medium of instruction. And I think that as much as we would want to see that the world is a small village, and we would like to believe that there is a small space for everybody. We are now 7 billion, if you know, and we will soon be twice this figure. This century comes to its half, and people are speaking of how many of us will have the opportunity to survive.
Yes,
There are people who would die in their hundreds in India if the sun is warmer that day or that week. We have heard in the last there were more than 1,000 that they lost their lives because of
within days
because of the heat.
Yeah.
Similarly, of course, with the low temperature, when snow is there and temperature drops below sub-zero, and there are people who die as well. Now, I think there is a place for all these kinds of advocates of different views. Some would say, let's go cosmopolitan, because we are a society comprises of ethnic diversities and so on. You name it, ethnicity, gender, class, linguistic, and what have you. And people would think, now, if we are speaking of constituents of cultural identity, then what we are looking at, it's at what divides this identity, because people are not similar.
Yes.
In fact, they are dissimilar. So some would say, well, let's go for more cosmopolitan, because we are so diverse in terms of our background, ethnic diversity, and so on. And Oman is unique, as we all say. We don't say it because we are Omani. We say it because these are the realities of life. Yeah. We are surrounded by 3 seas. In fact, we are surrounded by 4 seas. If you consider the empty quarter is another sea of sands. Yeah. So we are, in a sense, we are in isolation from the influence of, or the immediate influence of neighbors as such. But when you look into the realities, you find that this is not the case. The Omanis decided to migrate and go to East Africa and India and so on, and they did not even know how to swim. They were daring enough to go and expedite and look for greener pasture, or to chase the Portuguese who were the colonizers in the country, and chase them to their whereabouts, where they chose to end up in East Africa or in India, for example. So we were known to be a seafaring nation.
Yeah.
And it was said, I'm not sure if this is an anecdote, that during the early Islamic states in the Islamic history, you know, when the Muslims decided to open up their horizon and open up countries in order to spread Islam, so what they do, they select their warriors from the closest nation or community that is closest to the area that is intended to be opened.
Yeah.
And the Omanis were, as I read, but I'm not sure where, so I cannot document it now. They have taken the Omanis to open up India, and now if you speak to any of those Noakhtas, captains of traditional ships, you know, they leave their families behind and they disappear and cruising the seas for as long as it takes.
Yes.
Months. And they settle there. They establish and they build their families. And when Omanis went to East Africa, for example, this is something interesting. They did not choose to preach or change the lifestyle of the people there and change their cultural setup. Yes, Islam was paramount in their urge, but they did not
enforce it.
They did not ask them to speak Arabic. They spoke their language.
Yes.
Which is interesting. You know, if you speak of, you know, the former colonizers, you would find the French wanted to
impose.
They wanted to really transform the countries
identity
into culturally French kind of entity. Of course, French in a sense that they are second-rate citizens, but they wanted them to speak their language. They wanted them to believe in what they do believe. So I think that in that sense, Oman has so much to look into and to cherish and to celebrate. We cannot simply feel proud because, you know, the national team has won the GCC countries championship or they scored well in the whatever league. We have so much to feel proud of. This is a nation that provided the Sumeris in the Mesopotamia with copper. We are connected with Babylonia as long as history conveys to us.
I love to hear all of this. It's really good learning about our history, learning about how deeply rooted, you know, our culture is in Oman. What a lot of young people might say, okay, that was the past. How would the past affect me? Why should I look, Omani, or be proud as an Omani, where I cannot compare the glories of the past with the present, the present days? Why should I even be proud of an identity? My identity, I would like to look, to sound like the strongest nation in the world. How do we counter act that? What's the counter argument?
Well, you started with the counter argument that if I am to stick to my identity as an Omani, will I look at different cultures and different identities? I look at them down or despise them, or
not at all.
Not at all, because Omanis, as again, this is not a very long history past. This is during the build-up of the Islamic states. They built an Islamic state. Northern Africa, for example, the Dawla Rustamiyya.
Yes.
And until now, the Omanis, even in their, if you can call them ghettos, in the manner they live in Northern Africa, people speak of their piety. They speak of their honesty. They speak of them as as a community, righteous community. And I don't think this is something that you cannot compare with, that you cannot relate to.
Yeah.
Now the point is, the youth, as we all know, the youth have their own concerns, their own kind of preferences.
Yeah.
And whoever is in charge, be it in the curriculum development, and whether it's in the formal education system, or at the universities,
or media,
it is their role to build on that strong element of our identity. Now, when I speak of the youth, we all had youth in different development of the states.
Yeah.
So whoever is in my age now used to be a young lad in his time, and in our time when we were young.
You are still young at heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Allah yajbur bkhatirak. The point is, I'm trying to make, in our time, what were our concerns are not today's youth concerns. And it takes a psychologist, it takes a sociologist, it takes an educational to look into the situation that we are in at this stage. There is, as you rightly said, there is a state of disconnect.
Yeah.
Now, the youth have different worries, different concerns. They are looking for, job stability, for example. They are looking for avenues, for opportunities, for fairness in their chances to get whatever they want or go for whatever they have within their reach the technology that we did not have, and they can reach out far and beyond what you think that you can assume to be the role model for them. They transcend the models that we try to superimpose, and we should not.
Yeah.
We should not. I think that we need. There is, of course, now. I think there is an authority that looks after the youth, which was created recently. But I would like to see that the concern of the youth, because we are speaking of a society that is 60% of them are youth.
Under
Yes.
30, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are under 30. And therefore, and every year we have some 70,000 graduates of the formal education system.
Yeah.
So, what is it that you need to do is to face those challenges, not to assume that they are not there. Yeah, and you should not also underrate or undervalue what the youth have to say. You need to speak to them, to sit with them, and to see what is it that they want, what is it that is missing. Any reform plan, and I think I'm sure that we are speaking of something that we would like to, inculcate.
Yes.
Whether it's the value system, whether it's the religious system, whether it's the historical areas whereby we feel that we are proud of. And it is not uncommon that the nation is by reaching out to the glorious past, you will be able to learn lessons. You will be able to engage and involve the youth. And what is it that our forefathers used to do? And how did they manage to conquer the world?
Yeah.
Why Napoleon, on his way to India to overturn the English Empire at that stage, he wrote to the Sultan of Oman because he knew that he has 700 warships overpowering the Indian Ocean at that time. This is before, of course, the steam was invented.
Yeah.
We were the masters of the trade winds, and we could we could set a sail in any directions we wanted.
Yeah.
But of course, there is a gap that happened immediately after the invention of those gadgets.
Okay. How can we utilize and use our history to boost? I know you've mentioned the education system have to do that. The media can do that. But if it was a single message that you would like to send out to youth themselves to explore their identity and to be proud of, what would that be? Yeah, in the context of history, relating history to their future, let's say.
I suspect that not many of them are aware of what are we speaking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first issue that we need to address is how to publicize.
Yes.
And how to popularize
Yeah.
these concepts. How many of our youth is aware, for example, of our interlinkages with the civilizations, the Indus Valley, the Mesopotamia, or the Pharaoh's court when they used to import frankincense
From Salalah.
from Salalah. Hatshepsut's words are still, they are ringing in our ears. That
Yeah.
she sent her advisors in order to get her the best of the frankincense to the court of Pharaohs. Now the problem is, I think we are either not banking on those elements of pride in our history, or if we are speaking of them, we speak of them as simply an accumulation of articles or paragraphs for pupils to score well in the exams.
Yeah.
They do not value what has happened. They do not value, because I think the youth, like any other individuals, whatever the age index, when they say, I am an Omani, what does an Omani means for them?
Yeah.
They need either to be informed or either to be told where to get the information from the resources that are available. And I think that probably, the TV stations, media, radios, they can play a big role in kind of, disseminating this knowledge, which has been hitherto kept as Oman's best kept secret, as one of the BBC films.
True. I really like what you said about the history being summarized in the books in a single paragraph, just to pass the exam. Not only that, I've seen it in school. I'm sure Lamia have seen it. Some students would hate history because of that. Yeah. Everything is summarized in a way that it doesn't really make sense. Yeah. And because it doesn't make sense, I don't understand it. Therefore, I loathe it.
You don't feel connected to it.
I don't feel connected to it. And therefore, people really grow up having the same emotions, negative emotions towards the past. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the reality. Dr. Mahdi, if we summarize what we have said, history is really important in shaping up the identity of any human being. That history has to be conveyed in a proper manner to youth via proper parenting, proper media, and proper education as well.
Correct.
Yeah. The second aspect of identity, if we move to second aspect of identity, which is language.
Yeah, before moving into that, I was going to ask Dr. Mahdi. So, do you think that in order to protect our identity, it requires? I mean, if we can remake history, if the Arabs and the Muslims and the Omanis have done it before, why can't we do it again? Why can't we be an important civilization that can contribute as it did in the history? Do you think that it comes down to the core that we lost our identity, and that if we actually get to know our identity and understand it and protect it by seeking knowledge of what our history looked like, that we can actually bring back that golden age?
Definitely. I am a firm believer that you do not need at all to form guards to protect your identity.
Mm-hmm.
Your identity protects itself because it is deep-rooted in history. We are speaking of Oman that is sitting on a history of some 6,000 years. You're not speaking of an economic reality that was built on an oil well, for example. You are not faking it.
Exactly. So you just need to seek that knowledge.
That is correct. You need to bring it up, bring it back. And I don't know, during Ramadan, for example, I have heard of, tens of, let's be modest, realistic, tens of programs that speak of recipes.
I think you definitely underestimated the number of shows.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say,
yes.
you have so many of those. Of course, you say any word that doesn't make sense, and you win yourself a 50 riyals prize, for example.
Yeah.
People are kind of inclined to go for what is simple and superficial and doesn't make sense because it doesn't require hard work. It doesn't require that you do your homework.
Exactly.
And any endeavor to bring back your history and your strength of history requires you to consult books,
Yes.
to consult elderly, and come back with the stories that expresses this kind of.
And also,
Okay.
and do we need to break for prayers? We'll break for a minute for the call of Asr prayers. Inshallah, we'll be back with you in just a minute. Dear listeners, thanks for waiting, and we are back. Just would like to remind you that our lines are open, and you can call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. I would also like to remind you about the new timing for the show starting tomorrow, inshallah. The Art of Living is going to start from tomorrow at 2:40 p.m. for 1 hour. So that's 2:40 to 3:40 starting tomorrow, inshallah.
Not only tomorrow, but throughout the month of Ramadan, inshallah.
Yeah, starting tomorrow to the end of Ramadan. Dr. Mahdi, would like to now talk about the role of language in changing our identity, our Arabic language. How important is it to stick to our language and to communicate in our language, whether it be the Fusha, how can I say it in English?
Formal language.
The formal Arabic language, or whether it be the Omani dialects. What is the importance on the role of using both the Omani dialect and the Arabic language in shaping our identity? Is it actually important?
By all means, of course. I would say it's next to religion.
Yeah.
How much you take pride in Islam, you take pride in the language that by which you communicate. And I think that the culprits are many when you are looking for who is the cause of what are we facing now. Parents take their kids to Madaris Thunaiyyat al-Lugha, dual language schools.
Yeah.
And
It's very deceiving that name, Thunaiyyat al-Lugha, is very deceiving because it's actually just a single language, which is English.
Very true.
With a flavor of Arabic.
Yeah.
Very true. And this is not only in Oman. Maybe Oman is less infected with this
disease.
You look, everywhere in Arabia. You look even in the UN. You find, the speakers for the Arab countries. They prefer to speak either in French or English. Although Arabic is considered one of the 6 formal languages of the UN. So they in the UN they are obliged to translate into Arabic as they do with every other language. The Chinese speak Chinese, and the Russians speak Russian, and the Arabs who enjoy a width of 22 nations, and they choose to speak any other language. And I think that It's a matter of looking down probably at who we are.
Where do you think that came from?
You know, Ibn Khaldun, the famous Islamic sociologist, he has written that, you know, the nation that is invaded, you know, members of that nation would love to mimic and imitate, you know, the way the invaders are dressed and the way they speak and so on and so forth. And even though we deny it, we do it, whether it's unconsciously or consciously. And I think that it is a very pertinent at this stage when you speak of the language as a unifying factor in forming the cultural identity.
Precisely.
You know, in Oman we have several languages. We don't want to hide our heads in the
absolutely,
sands.
absolutely, yeah.
And many of those communities, they choose to speak the respective languages at home.
Yes.
And that interferes, of course, with the manner that the young ones come out into the society at large and start expressing themselves. Because language is about, you know, when people ask you, what is your native language? So you would say Arabic, for example. And in reality, it is not Arabic, because the language that you think with is different, is the language which is community-based.
Yeah.
And when you do that, of course, that means that, your ability to excel is limited because it's not your language.
Yeah.
And I think that although I was heading the language center at SKU, I was advocating, especially when we have functions, that as much as we can, we use Arabic as a medium of communication. And in many disciplines at the university, you may be aware of that. I'm sure you do.
Yes,
you do, Dr. Weil, as well. The instructors, the professors, whose Arabic is better than their English, they would immediately, you know, switch into Arabic as soon as they realize that their students will understand Arabic better.
Yeah.
And I think that this is terribly important. It is not a simple thing to let it go. And I believe that maybe you will have to use coercive measures in order to make sure that people communicate in the language that we all feel proud of, in the language of the Holy Quran. And some would even claim that this is the language of dwellers in paradise.
Yes.
So you need to celebrate the language. We are not speaking of mu'allaqat al-ashr, for example, the pieces of poetry that were, kind of
written in gold and hang in the Kaaba.
In Kaaba. We are speaking of a language that is easily understood. Yeah. And I would hate it to see a broadcaster, for example, who speaks English, speaks Arabic, with all the mistakes, punctuation marks and what have you. يرفع ما ينبغي أن ينصب. And it is. I think that this is very close to one's heart and to one's identity. And of course, you speak of nannies, for example, and mothers who gave away their role as mothers, so they leave the kids in the hands of nannies. And some of the children they speak Tagalog and they speak Malayalam and true, it is.
But not a proper Arabic. Yeah, not even, they can't put up a sentence.
Not even a proper English.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Mahdi, I've never understood. I've really never understood why on earth are we moving towards an education system and change the language. What type of message are we trying to give youth? I mean, as a national strategy in Oman, why are we even allowing that? What are we trying to convey to the youngsters? Are we trying to tell them that your language is not capable to carry the actual meanings of modern science and technology? It's such a detrimental message and destructive one, really. If you look at any nation that has excelled in science, technology, innovation, one of the common denominators is that they always study in their own language, in their native language. Sweden, Germany, Japan, China, Turkey, Scandinavia, they all study in their own language. If you look into the Arab nation, we are lacking behind, and if you look at the reason why, this is one of the major reasons, I would say. If you look at the Arab nations that really excelled in innovation, Iraq and Syria. Those spoke Arabic language, and they taught, even in university, they taught in Arabic. As an example, I always give, I had several friends of mine in the UK from Syria. They were doctors who came to the UK with almost next to none in terms of knowledge of English. They couldn't speak English, but they were practicing doctors, and they wanted to further their education and become surgeons and consultants. And they studied for a few months. They studied English, and they mastered English in few months. After that, immediately they started applying for jobs, which is part of their training. And always they were the first in their batches. Whenever there was an interview, they would be chosen. Yeah.
I think we'll just take a phone call. Hello?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you, Dr. Lamia?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Hatem?
Fine, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen.
It's nice to hear from you.
It's a very interesting topic, and a topic that is dear to my heart, which is the Arabic language.
Yes.
And I feel what Dr. Mahdi has said is very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
But we have let go of our language, and we don't know the value of our language anymore, as we're moving towards learning other languages and forgetting our original mother tongue, which is Arabic. Today, people have this assumption that if I make a mistake in English, then it's embarrassing. What would people say about me? But I feel the other way around. If I make a mistake in English, then I don't have a problem because it's not my language. But if I make a mistake in Arabic, then I am to be blamed.
Absolutely true.
And especially for the parents who are encouraging their children to start as their first language to speak in English, while their Arabic is so broken, this is not something to be proud of. It's not something that will help our children. You don't think about their career only, what will they do when they grow up. Mm-hmm. But you think about their heritage and their culture and how they will communicate in their own community. So I would urge everyone to go back to the Arabic language and teach our children and also practice it. Today, for example, if I go to the street and I speak in Fusha, in the proper Arabic language, people might find me insane. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is a shame. Yeah,
we should all be
communicating in the best proper Arabic that we learned from our forefathers. Thank you very much for the show. I really enjoyed it today.
Thank you very much, Hatem, for your phone call. I think that's a very, very important message and a very important thing that we need to all think about, because these days you find a lot of the young generation parents who really focus on teaching their children English, and they always say that this is the world now. All the universities abroad are taught in English. Even Sultan Qaboos University is in English if they want to study here. So they really focus on English, and they treat Arabic almost like a second language. So that's a very important message that Hatem was sending. What do you have to say, Dr. Mahdi, about that?
Well, it goes without saying, of course, that I did mention Ibn Khaldun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the package whereby you feel this complex of inferiority towards your own constituents of identity, and you look at whatever, the colonizers or the mighty powers or whatever. This is the language that probably is one of the determinants of superiority.
Yeah.
And this is not the case at all. And we've seen it. And you just mentioned, Dr. Wael, that the nations that I haven't heard of, Scandinavian, for example, And when I hear the Scandinavian, it does not ring a bell. But people speak good English. If they have to, they speak good English.
Yes.
Yeah.
The French, they would be hesitant to speak English because
Very
for
proud
them,
of it.
for them, they feel that you are kind of delegating that language.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe the issue of education again comes first at this stage, because private schools and universities and the education system is controlled by the government.
Yeah.
There are arms of the government. They are in charge of private schools, and for the non-Omanis whose language is different, then it is their entitlement to continue their education using the language that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
But for Omanis and Arabs in Oman, part of their feeling proud that they are in this nation, in this country, Oman,
Yeah.
and it's kind of bizarre. You see the paintings, for example, using the calligraphy, for example, they highly score in the market. People pay dearly in order to buy an art piece that uses the Arabic calligraphy.
Yeah.
Is it not, kind of
Ironic.
ironic
Yes.
that you value when it is
Hang there.
hang there and you don't use it? And I think that we have every reason to be proud to use the language. Everything beautiful, everything musical is there in the language, and you would find it funny, of course, for foreigners when you speak to them. Why did you not learn Arabic, that you've been in this country for 5 years, 6 years? They say, whenever I try to speak Arabic, they jump and communicate with us in English. So I have no reason.
That's right.
No incentive, really.
That's
No
right.
incentive.
You find
Yeah.
some people like here for 30 years but don't speak any Arabic because they don't feel the need to.
You started talking about little children and being taught English before their mother tongue, or preferring to speak English. Could you shed more light, and from your own personal experience with this?
I'm proud to be a grandfather of many of those small jewels of mine, girls and boys. And whenever the medium of communication comes into question, they will hear their grandmothers insisting on them speaking Arabic. I would intrude and insist of them trying to express themselves in Arabic. And I think that some of them find difficulty, and some of them they love it. They use beautiful Omani colloquial terms at times, and you would find it. You recall this little joke when they said an Arab Bedouin traveled to the UK, and when he came back, they told him, "What is it the most pressing element that you have seen?" He said, "I even their kids speak English." And I believe that this is really, it stems from this feeling of proud of what you are and what you have. And when you speak of losing identity, losing touch with your history is one, losing touch with your language is two, and losing touch with your religion is three. All these elements of pride, of strength in your composition of identity, is really a decision to be made by you as an individual, and a decision, most importantly, to be made by authorities. To bring home this kind of pride and And I don't see any reason, really, I share with you, that why would anyone, for example, in Turkey and in Germany, they even, the media, they would love the media that is coming from Hollywood and the West, but they would use, what do they call it, doublage. They don't use the subtitles.
Yes.
They don't use the subtitles. They make them speak like
That's right.
مسلسلات المكسيكية or whatever
Yes.
that we do. And at times when we feel comfortable to transform المسلسل who is alien, literally alien to our value system and so on, and make them speak
Our language.
Our language.
Yeah,
Language,
Arabic. Yes. No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I was in the UK, and I had my children. I raised my children there, and I had a wonderful time with my children there. One of the reasons that I had the liberty and freedom to teach them pure Arabic, to speak pure Arabic, without not only the formal Arabic, just Omani dialect, but to use the right terminologies and not to mix up a couple of languages when they interact, because I don't think that is right. Yeah, if I speak in Arabic and rather than name something, use the Arabic term, I would say telephone. I wouldn't say telephone. I would say hatif, or I would say naqal, and they really spoke brilliant Arabic, unfortunately, until they arrived Oman.
Yeah.
As soon as they arrived here, it became really very challenging to ensure that they speak proper Arabic without, using a word or two, English words, in a sentence, as much as I can. And every time when they do that, I stop them. But they never did that in the UK.
Why do you think it only happened after you came back? Is it because they got mocked at?
No, it's not that. But it's because the majority don't speak proper Arabic.
Influenced by the surroundings.
They say laptop. They say computer. They didn't say hasub, for example. Yeah. They say printer. They don't say tabi'a. Yeah. They've lost these words. They don't even know. And I would share a story. This is a true story. It happened to me. I've been in the UK for 12 years. When I came here, I took one of my children to the clinic, to the GP. And the doctor was a very young graduate who just graduated from the medical college, not SQU. And she started communicating with me in a broken Arabic and a lot of English. And I pretended I knew no English whatsoever. And I spoke deep Arabic Omani accent. Yeah? Intentionally. And she couldn't speak a word. She started stuttering. She wanted to explain what was wrong with my child in Arabic, and she started stuttering, and she couldn't complete a sentence in Arabic. And that is really sad. If a doctor cannot speak to, a patient, an Omani patient, I don't say that's the case everywhere, but this is the type of people we are also creating, and we're encouraging.
I share with you, since we are sharing experiences. I did my second degree in the US.
Yeah.
And there were a number of Arab parents who have children, and they had difficulties in finding the right school for their kids. So we went looking for a proper school, and we found out that some of those schools of communities, they open up the school for a term, and they knock at the embassies for resources in order to support them.
Yeah.
And if they do not get enough support, so the school closes down by the end of the term. So what we did, we decided, parents, that we will establish our own school for our kids. Obviously, we had, the number of kids were big enough to form a class.
Yes.
So what we did, we hired one lady to, focus on Islamic teaching and Arabic. And we parents we divided the hours amongst ourselves to teach our kids, the different other areas.
Yeah.
And the curriculum, each one of us have brought back home, the curriculum they used. So we brought few, a Qatari parent brought few, and a Saudi parent has brought few. So we took the books and to the Xerox machine, and we Xeroxed them, and we started teaching our children ourselves for almost a term.
MashaAllah.
Wow.
I don't know whether I don't know whether we did good, but the idea is, whenever you do think of doing something, there is a way.
Yes.
And
wherever there is a will,
as
there is a way.
As it is said, when there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah.
Dr. Mahdi, just because we're going to wrap up now, it was a beautiful, beautiful show, and I would like to continue more, but hopefully we'll continue later on, inshallah. But what are the 3 take-home messages that you would like to send out to the audience from today's session, on today's show?
Well, the first message that I would see is pertinent at this stage. Shall we bring to life our long-standing history?
Yeah.
We can do it in a variety of ways. Dramatic representation, and including them in the curriculum, and make it as
lively as possible.
As lively as possible. Not bombard our young kids with dictionary-like wordings,
yes.
We can even transform them into cartoons.
Cartoons,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And enough with Shahrazad and Thousand Nights with Nights, and so we have plenty. Sultan bin Murshid, I have read in one of the WhatsApp that I received. He's been selected as one of the 100 greatest leaders in the world in the war against Salibiyyin.
Number 2?
And number 2, parents, for God's sake, please take charge of your kids and make sure that they speak our language. And for the government, if it takes taking measures, I don't know, how would that be the case? Legislations through the Shura Council and the government.
Yeah.
We would like to hear the language spoken in public all over the place.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear different languages. They are not dialects, they are languages.
Yes.
That's right.
And this is I would say I would feel very much close to.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahdi. And by this, we're going to wrap up our show. And thanks to all our listeners out there. We'll see you again tomorrow. For now,
at 2:40.
2:40 tomorrow.
2:40 tomorrow with Dr. Mahdi, with a brand new show and a brand new topic.
Inshallah.
From me, Wa'il Al-Harasi.
And Lamia Al-Haj.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahdi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you.
Every time I close my eyes, I see in front of me.
Let's embark on a journey of knowledge and discovery. Let's learn from the extraordinary lives of the greatest in the art of living.
Join the conversation with hosts Dr. Wa'il Harasi and Dr. Lamia Al-Haj
Every day
from Sunday to Thursday
from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m.